Welcome, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is Mr. Aegis, and I will be the host for this session. I'm a member of the Knowledge Fellowship, and I am here to interview our very special guest, TinyToxicTofu, who we will bring on shortly. But first, of course, I want to thank everyone for joining us, for taking time out of their Saturday to spend some time with us. And first, of course, I want to thank everyone in the Knowledge Fellowship and the committee and everyone who has done so much work on this wonderful fellowship for so many years now. And I'm very happy to be able to engage in this active process to promote the members and to promote educational streaming. So the first thing I want to do, of course, is let you know, if you're new here, if you don't know us, the Knowledge Fellowship is a collection of educational live streamers who stream on Twitch, who talk about all different kinds of things in the fields that they are experts in, who have credentials in, who have an interest in, and who can share what they know with others. The purpose of the Knowledge Fellowship is to spread legitimate, science-backed, research-backed, legitimate, valid educational content in whatever their field is, whether it is arts and humanities, STEM, whatever they do it for free, and they present and provide free education for whoever wants to watch. There are about 100 members of the Knowledge Fellowship, 100 streamers who are a part of this wonderful community. These are real, qualified people who have years of experience, years of education, credentials, and people who just have an interest in sharing what they know. There are people who stream in this community who are in virtually every different kind of topic. We have dozens of different categories of members. The main purpose, though, the main thing we look for in streamers is that they provide meaningful content and real engagement with viewers, so that viewers can ask questions and can learn actively. Because there is so much misinformation out there, there's so much bad education out there. So we want to provide a platform that promotes the best of us out there. You can follow our stream team, and our stream team has dozens of members. And if you follow the stream team, what you'll find is that there is always someone streaming something educational and informative that you can watch. There's always someone on that you can watch instead of doom scrolling on Twitter or watching AI slop on TikTok. There's always someone streaming something that is going to be, trust me, very interesting, intriguing, that you're going to be able to learn from. For example, right now, just in this one screen cap, there's Astro Canuck, Homozygote, Science Streams, Nerduino, multiple people that you could choose from to watch to learn something. And that is at twitch.tv/team/the Knowledge Fellowship. I'm going to give a brief overview of the people who stream in this community because each of them deserves to have a mention at the very least, especially those who are newer or who have small communities and who are just beginning, just growing. Those are exactly who we want to promote. And as you see in the chat, thanks to our wonderful moderator, e⁻, who you should all go follow, an amazing math streamer, everyone is welcome to join the Discord. You don't have to be an educational streamer. You can just be a viewer, someone who's interested in learning. It's open to everyone to join, to meet other people interested in education, to meet and talk to the streamers in the community, and to ask questions and learn. Our first category that I want to go through is aerospace. We have quite a few who are in aerospace. The ones that I want to touch on here are Das Valdez, who does rocket science and launch coverage. You can watch them watch and react to and comment and give you insight into launches for space vehicles. EJSA, also in rocket science. Rocket Guy, that's I2 Rocket Guy, talks about the science of rockets. Just a Dutch guy, does aeronautics content and the history of aeronautic education and aeronautic engineering. And of course, Rocketology, who's also in the rocket sciences and aeronautics. I want to show that there are a great variety of streamers and content. Sometimes it is the hard science, sometimes it is very in-depth discussion, but there's also the fact that we're real people and we can incorporate comedy. Many of us also play games, and you can engage with us and watch us play games and hear us comment on whatever educational topics might come up in that game. This is EJSA with a clip that they were watching a launch and something went wrong.
This sucker right there, because look, dude, once the LOX hits it, boom, immediate explosion. They have an inter-flare stack. But not anymore, they don't.
So a little bit of wry comedy out of that disaster. Hopefully, I mean, no one was hurt in it. It was a unmanned rocket launch. Geosciences also is a very popular category. Something that I like because I don't know anything about geoscience going in. So you can watch GeoGym 2006, who does geology lab streams. You can watch them in the lab. Paleontologizing, you can watch them do live paleontology out in the field, actually in the field, working with plants and fossils. You can watch Rocket Sage, who does geoscience, talks about minerals, goes out into the field, talks about volcanoes, sedimentology. They can talk to you all about different crystals, not the, woo-woo, new age crystal stuff, the real science of crystals. And Volcano Doc, who will actually be our guest in the next month. That will be our August Seminar Series guest, a volcanology PhD. You can watch a volcano expert talk about volcanoes live on stream and ask them questions live. So here's a little clip from Rocket Sage, who's one of the co-founders of the Knowledge Fellowship.
Trying to get enough different kind of seismic energy going through there. So what happens is, in fact, if you look at it this way, it has very much submerged itself into the water saturated sediment. And now it's acting like a solid again. So I push on this, it's not going anywhere, it's not moving, right? Like I can push down on it, but it's not going into the sand. I'd have to, again, shake it for it to start sinking again.
So they're showing with a fun little example how the tectonic plates and how sediment works in earthquakes above my head. I don't know anything about that. I'm a health teacher. That's a little bit out of my depth, but really cool and interesting, and does really understandable examples like that. Life sciences, there are quite a few members who are in the life sciences. Alveus Sanctuary is involved in a wildlife sanctuary. You can watch content about the wildlife sanctuary. Andrew Holding is a cancer-focused academic. They actually study and talk about breast cancer research. Diatoms Attack, well, they talk about diatoms, of course, but they also do scanning electron and light microscopy. If you're interested in microscopes and seeing the very smallest aspects of science, you can watch that. Dr. WD-40, another co-founder of the Knowledge Fellowship, talks about birding, nature photography, and metal detecting. Very interesting. I wonder if they found anything really cool. I'll have to ask them. One sec, my ferret is in my water cup. Sorry, they got up to my desk. Maybe I'll show them in a second. Homozygote does molecular biology and talks about the latest science news. If there's something in the sciences that is out there, a new cool thing that's happening, you can watch them and they'll probably talk about it. Jax Vax is someone who talks about evolutionary anthropology. Maya, again, another great streamer who does wildlife conservation. There's me. I'm a health teacher, so I do health and wellness lessons and variety gaming. OpenSet, microscopy as well, literature, but also synthesizers, which is an interesting variety of content. Science Streams, one of my favorites. Not that I want to play favorites, but they talk about ants and they do interactive science and art. There is a lot of really entertaining stuff that they do. A lot of really strong engagement with the audience. And they just recently had a fantastic series of streams where they talked with women in STEM. Domination Time talks about health, diet, and fitness. They are someone who I would consider a very qualified expert to talk about physical fitness. So let's play a little clip from Homozygote.
Move that in the store. Is it next to the double chocolate chunk cookie? Am I gonna see the Costco guys near the cattle semen aisle?
So they were talking about an article about, I believe, genetic engineering. Sorry, which one are you? Oh, you are Moki. This is Moki, one of my favorites. Sorry, they're all over my desk. They got out of their cage, but I can't do anything about that. They are completely and totally untamable and uncageable. But let's get back to the streamers. Quite a few great math streamers. E to the 2i pi, as I mentioned, is one of our great math streamers. You can watch Actual Education, who does streams where they can help you with your homework, with your math homework at basically any level. Don Does Math, also does math homework help, and also does great gaming. E to the 2i pi is a mathematician, will do trivia, and of course loves Nintendo, classic Nintendo stuff. And Simplinks Pachinko is a math teacher based in the US who may also be able to help you with your math homework if you need it, and I always did when I was in university. Penn Center does variety math streaming and gaming. Stephen Wolfram, who you've probably heard of, is the creator of Mathematica and Wolfram Alpha and the Wolfram language. If you see them streaming, you'll want to check that out. So here's a clip from actual education that I saw not too long ago.
I understand what you're saying. Oh my god.
You understand? Does it make sense?
So the X moves stuff on the X line and the Y moves stuff on the Y line?
Yeah, so the stuff furthest away from the Y, so over here, moves stuff up and down on the Y line. Very good, very good. And the stuff very close to the X is going to move stuff to the left and to the right on the X line.
I definitely understand it.
Nice, dude. Dude, there you go. See, that's the most here. I'll give you like some applause for that, dude. There you go. You get some applause.
So they were helping a student understand graphing, understanding this equation. And they had that aha moment that if you've ever been a teacher, if you've ever tutored anyone, when someone is struggling with a concept and you are able to get them that aha moment, that is exactly why people teach. When someone gets it, when someone understands, that's amazing. Physics and astronomy, as you might imagine, is a very popular category. Astro Canuck, as I mentioned, does amateur astrophotography and will be able to help you understand it. And if you want to get into astrophotography, something you can watch. CosmoQuest X, which is run by the previous guest on the seminar series, Dr. Pamela L. Gay. They have interactive citizen science that you can be involved in. You can actually be involved in scientific research as a citizen, as a civilian, someone who doesn't even have any expertise. You can still be involved. Dr. Aaron Mack is into sci-fi and science, talks about the science of science fiction. Muhoodles, who was the first guest on the seminar series here, talks about astrophysics and astrobiology, the search for extraterrestrial life. And I don't mean UFOs. I mean, microbes and such on other worlds. Nerdwino talks about space science, engineering, and technology. The SETI Institute, again, you've probably heard of the SETI Institute. That is the search for extraterrestrial life, like perhaps UFOs. Skylius, another great astronomy teacher, and TinyToxicTofu, who will be our guest in just a moment, talking about the current events in science, technology, and physics. So let's see a little clip from Nerdwino.
Close to the menopause. Sorry, the menopause. Fuck. Oops. I meant close to the mesopause.
An easy mistake to make.
Okay.
They're a very engaging and fun streamer. Physics meets phys ed. Bitch Shepard says the world will never be the same. No, it will not. It will never be the same. I mean, I had to do some physics, biomechanics and stuff like that. That was my worst subject. Practical crafts is one of the most interesting categories because this is individuals who can actually teach you to do crafts live on stream. Cooking Without Looking is a blind streamer who talks about cooking and nutrition and cooks live for the stream, and who does so with no vision. I Paint Burbs. I'm going to guess you can figure out what they do from their stream name. There's Oh Bother, who does hands-on electronics content. If you're into electronics, you can learn how to do that craft from them. Pottery Dojo, someone that I've started watching, streams live pottery making. Ryan56K, gemstone fasting, if you're interested in jewelry at all. And Timber Anu does woodworking. So here's a little clip from Pottery Dojo.
It's better to just appreciate it for a moment. Gorgeous. And then let it go. So we're going to recycle this.
So they're recycling some of their material. I took a moment to admire it and show it off before they did so. There's also practical technology. So if you're interested in the practical skill of learning technology, there's 001 Anthony, who does keyboard building. That's a pretty interesting niche. Mr_Horologist does watch repair. That is, there's a lot of streamers out there who do content that you can just chill and watch, and you can just leave it on, and it's very relaxing. Maybe one of the most relaxing things you can watch. Notes and Volts is a DJ, talks about building guitars and custom DJ equipment. I know many people out there might be interested in that. And Sid Heresy does freelance audio engineering. And I want to show this clip from Mr. Horologist so you get an idea of what I'm talking about.
Normally you don't need to remove dial screws. You just loosen them up and they're just there to put pressure on the dial feet. That might be a Swiss screw.
So you can imagine how calming that might be. I don't know what it is about tiny things, people working on tiny things like jewelry or watches. That's just really a vibe. Programming. I'm going to have 3 slides of this because there's a lot of people you can learn programming from. Adam Learns Live is a game dev, talks about developing games with programming. Andy Lippy can teach people about OBS, which I'm using right now. Is someone involved in StreamerBot, much more. C# Fritz is in the programming languages of .NET, C, and JavaScript. Kit Boga, another name you've probably heard of, talking about scam awareness and programming in that field. Master Mindio, software coding. Paul Person, game dev developing, another person you could watch and learn about game dev. And Professor_Ashley, that's a very interesting streamer who talks about games user research, game design. RWX Rob, all kinds of Linux-based content, some coding guy, live coding right in front of you that you can ask questions about. Talk to Me Gooseman is someone who does development on Twitch extensions. So let's show a little clip from RWX Rob.
Anyway, the takeaway from this video is, what are the different languages? What does it mean to be a compiled language? Why is Java still a thing? Why is it used? And by the way, the one thing I want to end on is all of that insanity. It all happened for one reason. Everybody wanted to make things start faster, and they believed in a false dream. I mean, that's 2 reasons. They believed in the false dream that they would be able to write code and have it run anywhere, which never happened. It never happened, my friends. Anybody that's been alive during that time will tell you it never happened. It still hasn't happened. It never will happen. So
as you can see, there's someone who is a veteran in the coding languages and talking about some of the history of coding and why there are so many different coding languages. So the last category that I want to talk about are the social sciences. Social sciences, the arts and humanities, and things like Dr. Mick, who does therapy and mental health and gaming. They also are a hockey player, and they show their hockey content, which is super interesting. Marcus the Red Panda notes that he was, in fact, speaking the truth about coding. Yes, absolutely. I'm really important to talking about current events and discourse in politics. Lawful Masses, who is a copyright lawyer, another very interesting type of content if you ever watch things like Legal Eagle. Lotta Glotz, I started watching as well. They study about a dozen different languages, and they do so live on stream to help you learn those languages. Lumiru, someone who also does social issues, will interview people involved in things like politics and climate science. Melissa in Denial is an Egyptologist. Egyptology, one of the most popular things that people want to learn about, but they don't want to go to school for because it's really hard, but is also a museum educator. Nogre Zero calls themselves an itinerant philosopher if you want to listen to philosophy content. Professor EXP, a sociologist, is someone who describes themselves as a designer of experiences. If you're not sure what that is, I think you should check it out. So let's see a clip from Lotta Glotz.
Greet the guest. Aloha. Samwise Gamgee Game of Thrones. How is that not right? What the heck?
So as you can see, they are actually learning Hawaiian language and had a pretty interesting set of options in Duolingo. No, I don't think Samwise Gamgee is how you say hello in Hawaiian. Shane McInnes does history content, a lot of really interesting history content. Sophie Quests does historical exploration, will actually play historical-based games and comment on the historical accuracy, on the things that are happening in that game. And many games have a lot of great, accurate historical content, and many don't quite meet the standard. Stacy the Linguist is a linguistics and ESL teacher. An Xtalk programmer is a Dutch language instructor, so another person that you could learn another language from. And lastly, there is Ask a Scientist Gaming, is a group of scientists that you can ask questions to and plays retro gaming. Constababble is someone who is a scientist in climate science, does science communication, the things that we do, trying to communicate science in a way that is understandable and relatable to the public. Science streams, variety, all kinds of different science content. And finally, Zachapp, who does gardening content, dialogue. They talk a lot about. Thank you so much for the follow. Appreciate the follow. Zachapp does a lot of current events, talks about a lot of very interesting political and economic content. So let's see a little clip from.
The Kappa are known to favor cucumbers and love to engage in sumo wrestling. They are often accused of assaulting humans in water and removing a mythical organ called this. Oh, this is so cool. The mythical organ called the shirikodama from their victim's anus. Oh my god!
Yeah, so they are learning a little bit about Japanese folklore. That's not Lottiglots. That is Sophie Quest. Sorry, I got the name wrong. But lots and lots of different science streamers that you see there. All kinds of different people in every different kind of field you can think of. So there's always someone you can watch that's going to have great content for you. So that's what I have for you for my little opening spiel to promote and plug the Knowledge Fellowship and all the great streamers in it. But I'm sure what you're really here for is to see TinyToxicTofu. And I'm really looking forward to that. So let's bring our guest, TinyToxicTofu, onto the stream. Hello, there we are. How are you doing today?
Very, very good. Thanks so much for having me.
I am very honored to have you here and to be talking about physics content. So you are a physicist and you do physics content on your streams. So I have to ask, is that something you always wanted to do? When you were a little kid, did you decide you wanted to be a physicist and talk about physics?
God, no. No, the physics thing was a series of unfortunate or fortunate events that happened. And obviously the physics content only developed in the last couple of years. Because mostly I just wanted to play video games and have fun. And then as a side, preaching science and physics became a little bit of a side hustle. And I think that prospered.
So what were you involved in and doing before you got into streaming content? What did you think when you were getting that physics education? What kind of job did you think that you would be doing?
Oh, so my bachelor's was actually in physics and chemistry teaching. So I have a pedagogy degree. And I'm a qualified teacher in that sense. So originally I was just going to be a physics teacher. In Ireland, the education system is that you do placements and you actually are graded on your teaching placements. And I ended up having a poor experience, but also I realized I didn't really like kids. It was a bit of a late blossom for me. And somewhere along that bachelor's degree, I decided, you know what, I need to jump ship. And there was a great path with doing an applied physics master's. I was very lucky to get a scholarship, which also led to my PhD, which was also fully funded. I always describe it as a series of unfortunate events. You know, some people are born and have this passion to become PhD holders and physicists all their life. But for me, it was, an accident, one after the other.
I certainly understand as a teacher. After getting my teaching license, after my experience, I completely understand. I don't necessarily like working with kids, but you know what? It's very obviously, it's obviously very fulfilling, whatever level you're teaching at the high school level currently. But yeah, I was very fortunate to also have my education covered because otherwise, I'm in the US. So I think we have a pretty good understanding of how that works and the pay for teachers. So yeah. So when you first got into the streaming world, you got into streaming science content. What was that like at first? What kind of learning curve was that? Having, I don't know, I would assume no experience prior with that.
No. I didn't even know that there was other science communicators out here. So I was actually streaming on Twitch for about 6 years. And what I used to stream was things like Heroes of the Storm and something called League of Legends. I used to just play competitively, hence the toxic in my username. And this physics thing only developed a little bit towards the end of my PhD because I wanted to give it a go to streaming, like being entertaining, gaining a followership, actually being a positive influence. And if you're going to make content on the internet, especially if you're throwing yourself into something like Twitch and being a variety streamer, you do need a shtick, I'd like to call it. You do need something that sells, number one, but number two, something that you can provide that is unique. I didn't know what I had. I didn't know what unique thing I could do. I didn't know there was any science communication on Twitch. And so, well, I do have a couple of degrees in physics. And so I thought that that could be something. And it developed very slowly. At the beginning, all we would do is, instead of just chatting for 20 minutes before you start your game, I would pick a physics topic and we'd talk about it. Of course, this is back when, at best, I had 10 viewers. And so there'd be 2 or 3 people chatting with me. But honestly, I still remember those days, and you can have a really intimate conversation with 2 and 3 people in a chat about whatever thing. The way it started initially was me reading science articles. I still remember the first article we read, which was Alan Turing's paper on the imitation game. And we read that paper live on stream, tried to interpret it as best as we could. I was very surprised how I wouldn't say it was an easy read, but how easy of a read it was for me going in blind into it. And it was a great opportunity for my community to participate in the conversation that way. Obviously, it has now developed into something really, really crazy. I do a lot of social media stuff. I do a lot of derivations and problem solving. I teach general physics to a general audience who are just picking it up again. Specifically, that's kind of the target audience, not teenagers, but rather adults who might have never taken physics before, number 1, or number 2, need to rekindle their love for physics again. And of course, I can be a bit passionate and ecstatic about certain subjects that I learn, and I learn it on Twitch. So the last month has been taken up by robotics. Have I done anything robotics? Absolutely not. But in the past few weeks, we've built Bob, the self-balancing robot.
Yes, absolutely.
We've built, oh, he's a bit dismantled at the moment, but this is Cricket, the turret detecting motion laser turret. Yes. So again, I'm not teaching it, but we do intend to talk about physics. I build these robots. Chat teaches me the concepts and ideas, and there's a bit of programming. So it's a really, really interesting community that have developed in teaching science, but also my community teaches me science.
Learning together, obviously, one of the best ways to learn. And I certainly understand the need for a gimmick, the need for a niche. I started out as a VTuber, and my niche, because I didn't really know anything about it, was teaching. I would do what I know. You do what you know. I know health science. That was my background, my master's in kinesiology, and then in teaching. What could I do that would combine those and be fun for me? And not a whole lot of educational content in the VTubing world. And so I said, hey, let's do that. And that's worked for me. And it's something that obviously, finding your niche, finding your shtick, as you called it, shtick or gimmick, that really means something. And, having the community, even as you said, you start off really small, you get a couple people and then it starts to snowball. There's a gravity to it, especially if you are engaged with your audience, interactive with them. It's far different than watching a YouTube video, because you can't ask questions live. You can't talk to the person. You're not learning together with that person. And it may be easier to develop a following in YouTube, but I don't think it's as meaningful a community. So I think you're absolutely right there. But there are on Twitch, as we now have, science and technology categories. There are educational groups like the Knowledge Fellowship. How did you initially get involved with groups like that, with the Knowledge Fellowship?
Oh, I think it was in the beginning of my journey as a content creator. My beginnings of my journey as a physics teaching content creator about 2 years ago or so. I started looking on Twitch because obviously I didn't know what I was doing. I just chanced my arm and saw and threw it out there that I could teach a little bit of physics, and I wanted to see if anyone else was doing it. I kind of found a person or two. There was the Knowledge Fellowship tag under their name, and I think that's how I got into it. I was actually part of the Discord maybe almost a year before I actually was added as a Knowledge Fellowship content creator.
Fantastic. And I have been very privileged to be a part of the Knowledge Fellowship and meet all kinds of people and interview people like Dr. Pamela L. Gay. That was an incredible experience. Someone who is so well respected, who has such great credentials. Talking with Mahoodles and talking with Volcano Doc next month. So again, everyone out there watching, there are so many great people out there, people with so much great experience and knowledge that you can learn from, and do so in a really fun and engaging way. So I think that leads us to what you're going to talk about today with us. What are we going to learn from you together? So why don't I turn it over to you so that you can give us our educational content for the day?
Yeah. Can I actually ask a favor on the spot from you? Do you know the PowerPoint slide I prepared for you?
Yes.
I'm on the spot deciding to scrap it.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
If that's okay. So I can show some visual support. There is like a couple of cool diagrams there for something, and I'll show you specifically which one. But generally speaking, I'd actually think what I'm going to explain will be better. Just to explain my thought process. When I initially gave the PowerPoint slide, this is actually a bit very technical, and I'd actually like to target even a lot more general, and that's why I think speaking about it would be a little bit easier than showing diagrams. If I can't explain it without showing a diagram, I didn't do a good enough job of explaining it.
Hey, this is live TV. You got to roll with it. We'll
there
do it
you
live.
go. Exactly. Yes. So bringing up a lecture. So my PhD research was in a very specific thing. It's called a vanadium flow battery. And I'll talk to you a little bit about it, specifically as to why it's such a really, really cool thing. But I actually wanted to target something that science communication gets wrong all the time in the media. And this is a great opportunity to speak about it, which is electric grids and specifically electric grid stability. Now, a lot of what I'm going to talk about is going to be on the example of Ireland. That's where I'm from. And Ireland is an island, quite isolated of this electric grid, which makes it a very unique case. If Ireland can stabilize its grid, the rest of the world can, is the way I say it. Because generally speaking, the larger your electric grid is, the more integrated it is, the more probability statistically of a more stable grid. So my talk is kind of separated in two little sections. First is why is electric stability so hard? That's number one. I just want to explain this, and it's something that, again, like I said, the media gets wrong. And number two is a little bit about my PhD research, which is the vanadium flow battery, and I'll just introduce the concept to you. So, the electric grid, very, very simply, it is the system that's integrated in our world that provides power. We're live streaming here on Twitch. We have loads of lights on, and my camera's been operating. And everyone who's watching the stream needs power to, run their PCs or laptops or phones to see this. And what's happening is there's power being generated on the grid, whether it be a big coal operated generator or gas or renewable. And you're putting energy into the grid, and the output is you, us consumers. And there is a perfect balance between these two things, input and output. Okay. If the input starts getting too high, there's a mismatch and an unbalance with the output, and vice versa. If the output, i.e. the demands, become too high, the input has to match up with it. Otherwise, there will be a failure in the grid, blackouts and such. Now, Ireland operates at a frequency of 50 hertz. I think the United States operates at 60, which is just the frequency of the wave of power that's being generated. But that ultimately doesn't matter. But that 50 hertz, that number, is basically your equilibrium point. If it starts falling a little bit below, it means that you're not producing enough power to keep the electric grid stable. If it starts going a little bit above, that means that you're providing way too much power on the grid that isn't being consumed. Now, I always like to teach the concept of a synchronous electric grid using Ireland. And the way I describe it is, look at the island of Ireland. Hopefully you can imagine it. You can imagine it as a blob. And visualize yourself 10 generators equally distributed around Ireland. Maybe producing something like 300 megawatts. You don't need to worry about the unit, but that's a lot. 300 megawatts. So you have 10 generators, you have 3,000 megawatts operating on the electric grid. And they're all synchronized with each other. They're all producing an equal amount of energy and stable at 50 hertz. Disaster strikes. I'm sure we've experienced disasters or two in our lives. And one of the things that happens is one of those generators collapses. What do we do? So there's a few things that are in place with a synchronous grid, i.e. synced up with each other. All of these grids are synced up with each other. And the first thing that happens is is that there is an inherent inertia in the generator. You can imagine you cycling on a bike, right? You're cycling a bike, you're pedaling, your feet are going, and then you kind of let your feet go for a little bit. Have you ever felt the pedals pushing your feet for a little while longer? That's inertia, okay? So the generators have inertia for some time, and it buys you that valuable few seconds to give information that your grid is becoming unstable. That's number one. Number two, all generators are not operating optimally. They're not operating at 10%. So when, I'm just making up a number here for this case, but let's say that all these 10 generators around Ireland were all operating at 90% efficiency. The minute one of those generators collapses, first of all, you have a couple of seconds from the inertia to react, but number two, all the other generators start pumping up that extra 10% to operate at 100. And so the output is constantly being matched. Your total energy output on the electric grid, 3,000 megawatts, let's say that's the demand, is being held constant. This is the inherent design of a stable, synchronous electric grid. Now, although I did give an example of Ireland here and an oversimplified discussion, the principle applies across the world. The more generators you have, as you can imagine, a little bit of statistically, the more stable your grid is. You have more possibilities. You have a lot of shoulders to lean on. Now, what renewable energy is doing, this is going to sound controversial. It's like I'm stepping in and I'm saying renewable energy is bad. Renewable energy is not bad, but here is the problem. So a lot of people are, in the news articles will constantly say things like, oh, wind turbines are too expensive. Solar panels are not efficient. And materials are very hard to come by. I don't know how much truth there is in a lot of them, but that's not the main truth as to why there isn't more integration of renewable energy. The reality of the situation is that things like wind turbines and solar panels are not synchronous sources of energy. It means that when you connect them, you have to, especially a wind turbine is weird because it's actually a physically moving turbine. It is technically a synchronous thing, but it's not synced up with the grid. So you have to make it asynchronous and then synchronize it back to the grid. There's a lot of electronics to get it connected smoothly to the grid. And the more components you add to any system, the more energy inefficient it becomes. But let's say out of those 4 out of those 10 generators on Ireland, we replace them with renewable energy. We replace them with wind turbines and solar panels. 40% of our power is now renewable. Great stuff. Now, let's play our scenario again. One of those generators collapses. 10% of your energy collapses. You now have no ability to respond to that as efficiently as you were able to do so. First of all, you don't have that 10% anymore, that expansion to give you time to respond to the grid. Your time is shortened, first of all, because your percentage error, what is it now? It is, what is 1/6? Is that 12.8%? Something like that. 12.5. That is the amount of percentage that you need to respond with now, number one. And number two, you don't have that extra 10% room of error with all the other electric grids, other generators, because your wind turbines and your solar panels do not have the ability to do the same thing as generators do. There is new modern technology coming in. There is a way of what is it, yaw or tilt? I forget which one it is with turbines, that you can increase the output of wind turbines very, very quickly. But again, it isn't efficient. I spoke about this earlier, where I said that if you have more components in your system, the less efficient your system is going to be. So if anyone's had a weird issue before where, I don't know, they had a USB-C port and they needed to connect it to HDMI. Have you ever done this thing where you've plugged in like 7 different conversion cables?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Look, it works. It's great. It works, but you are dropping efficiencies with every single integration that you do with that. So just be mindful of that.
More points of failure too.
Exactly. There's so many issues with any little point that you add to it. Now, my spiel comes in here now where I talk about vanadium flow batteries, and they are a fantastic tool. going to turn on the fan. It's getting a bit hot here. Yeah, vanadium flow batteries are very, very unique because they're a battery integrated with the grid. They're not synchronous, they're asynchronous. But what's really cool about them is they have a very fast response time. This is the selling point that they have over any other battery. But even before I get to that, kind of to highlight a little bit of discussion. So this is my point of this big electric grid discussion, is to kind of mention that this is the reason why the news probably isn't portraying the full truth of the situation. It's not because they're being shady and spreading misinformation and there's a bunny in the background. Of course, Bambi came in. It's because it's actually really difficult to explain it. I spent 10 minutes there explaining the concept in a very, hopefully, intuitive and simplistic way. But in reality, it's a very hard subject for anyone to pick up, especially someone who's not a scientist, and explain it to majority of the people. So if in reality we wanted a really good synchronous grid, it has to be a generator. They all have to be similarly operating. There's this kind of ratio plan I have in my head where you have a big ass giant generator in the central of your system. And it would be the bare minimum thing that's running. So usually you can test every country to see what is your bare minimum energy, i.e. what you're working at night. And then from there on in, you have a medium, smaller generators, the same types, but just in smaller scales that can respond accordingly to the demands of the grid. So ideally, I always kind of say this, that a nuclear power plant in the central of Ireland operating at 3,000 megawatts is the perfect solution. That being said, again, a little bit of an asterisk there. If you have a nuclear power plant in Ireland and any minor accident happens, Ireland will not exist. We're that tiny of an island. So probably not the best solution. But again, a big giant turbine to control your bare minimum load and then all these little tiny ones to respond accordingly would be the most efficient thing. Now, the counter argument to it, because I always like to play devil's advocate, is all these solutions are very difficult. And the counter argument to this is my kind of pro, or my thing that I push for, is energy security. So I just spoke the last 15 minutes or so on energy stability and why this is a huge problem and why this is a big issue in engineering, science, physics, everything. But energy security is one of the biggest issues, and we experienced this in the last few years, where if you are powering your nation with one form of energy and anything happens to that energy source, you have absolutely, I was going to put in a swear word there, but I'm going to control it. You've messed up your nation. There is nothing you can do. And whether it be attack by foreign nation, whether it be political, whether it be economical, there's all these little things. So
supply
security
chain issue
and
either.
Exactly.
Like we've had recently.
Exactly. Almost every country in the last 5 years has experienced some sort of issue with this. And so my biggest push is sacrifice that electric stability to a certain extent for energy security, which is a little bit of everything. It's kind of like how investment works. You don't put all your eggs in one basket. You do a little bit of everything.
Get a mutual fund.
Exactly. And so I think everything should be in operation, from gas to oil to renewables to energy storage, electrochemical and physical. A little bit of everything. Capitalizing on your nation's geology is really, really good as well. Geography, if you have access to dams, do dams. If you have access to wind, exactly. So that's very, very important. So that's my first section, the electric stability, and my second section is just my little solution, and I'll very briefly talk about vanadium flow batteries so we don't stay up all night on this. So vanadium, it is an element, and it is a really, really cool element. When you dissolve it in electrolyte solution, basically sulfuric acid and water, and before anyone is saying, oh, that's so dangerous, it's the same thing as your stuff in your car, battery acid, same concentration, nothing too crazy. And it exists in 4 unique oxidation states. It exists as vanadium 4, vanadium 5, vanadium 3, and vanadium 2. This is probably where I could actually bring up the power presentation if that's okay.
Sure.
And what would be perfect is power slide 9, if you could click into it and press play for the animation. It's a very nice animation I made for my PhD defense a long time ago. Oh, it's going to be a while.
Well, yeah, you have these great animations, and you put a lot of work into this.
It ended up being a bit too technical, so a bit. There we go. This next. Okay, actually, this is the perfect slide to start with. This is vanadium 5, 4, 3, and 2, and imagine a slit in between V4 and V3 there. So vanadium 4 is beautiful blue. And that is on the positive side in a discharged state, i.e. your phone is dead. Your battery's dead on your phone. When you begin to charge the battery, it changes from V4 to V5 in this beautiful yellow color. Actually in high concentration, usually that's when you work with vanadium flow batteries, it's actually this brick red color. It's very, very beautiful. And that is when it's charged. On the other side, on the right-hand side, you have vanadium 3. It's a green color in a discharged state, i.e. when your phone is dead. But then you charge up your phone all the way to 100% and it changes to V2. Purple isn't a real color according to physics, and it's really hard to capture on camera how beautifully purple that is. It is the most vibrant purple color I've ever witnessed. If you could go to the next slide there really quickly, I'll show you how a vanadium flow battery operates. Perfect. And I think, is the animation working? It's very slow. Yeah, it is. Oh, we need to go back. So there's an animation here. Oh no. Apologies. Back one more then. There we go. All right, the animation isn't working. It's fine. It's a very, very slow animation. It's just liquid moving around the molecules.
It is
okay,
moving.
it's very, very slow. So, as you can see, we have the positive side, V4, and we have the negative side, V3. We have water, that's H2O. Sometimes I draw it as H3O+. Very, very spicy water there. Nothing to freak out. And of course, we have H2SO4, but usually in solution, H2SO4 doesn't exist that way. It exists as HSO4-. Again, this is partially the reason I originally removed all of this. This is a bit too technical. There is no need for all of this. All you need to know is that there's 3 things I can count. There's vanadium, there is sulfuric acid, and there's water. Now, in the next slide, it'll zoom in now, and I'll show you another animation of what happens when you begin to charge. So we have vanadium 4. So 1 click, I think, should do it. Excellent. And as you begin to charge, vanadium 4 changes to vanadium 5 on the positive side. Now, classical electricity, the electron has to go from the positive terminal to the negative terminal. We produce 2 protons on the side of the positive side. And vanadium 3 changes to vanadium 2. If anyone here has any bit of chemistry background, that proton has to transfer across the membrane to keep the equation perfectly in equilibrium and make sure everything is equated on each side. So that is how it happens. Over time, you charge vanadium 4 and it changes to vanadium 5. That's the next slide. And vanadium 3 changes to vanadium 2. So this is what it looks like in the discharge state. And the next slide there is in the charge state. And that's exactly the idea behind a vanadium flow battery. The next few slides are all about my research, but honestly, like I said, I decided to pull it all out, that it is a bit technical. I did a lot of spectroscopic analysis and determining the longevity and the lifestyle. It's almost a social science on vanadium, like why vanadium behaved the way it did. And certainly, for some reason, vanadium 5 is very, very bold, and vanadium 2. But yes, basically all 4 of the oxidation states of vanadium behave differently. Vanadium 4 is the poster child, and then everything else just goes downhill.
If you want to see more of the technical stuff, you should definitely be following TinyToxicTofu, and you will get all of that interesting animations and such.
Yes, especially in all my conference presentations. I like, again, I'm happy enough to do a bit more technical, but I decided to throw in the electric stability specifically because I thought that was one thing that's not really been hit properly or talked about properly, in my experience, by other scientists. Obviously, it's very hard to find a scientist specifically in this one little area. But it's something that I see in media constantly get wrong. And again, I'm not feeding into a conspiracy theory here that, oh, you know, big battery pharma, sorry, I can't think of a conspiracy theory here on top of this, is trying to block the news. I think it's just really, it's truthfully really hard to tell the public the truth, because you need to understand this. And so it's easier to say, wind turbines are expensive, solar panels are expensive, this is why we're not doing it. So that's my short or long enough spiel.
And
I hope
that's
that is
directly about
satisfactory.
the science communication, trying to speak science to the public. It's exactly why in one piece of research that I was talking about, I gave a lesson on the love languages and how that's a really popular thing. And like you're talking about, there's certain popular conceptions about wind turbines. That's obviously got to be a good thing, but not necessarily so. There's so much science that comes out, and there's one little piece of research that looks good. I see that in the supplement industry. Someone has one study that says, oh, celery salt helped people lose weight. It's one study with like a sample size of 12 people. Don't get too excited, but then people jump on it, and then it becomes a trend, and that becomes, the popular conception of whatever is happening. So definitely very, very common in the health fields, because everyone is looking for, the next big thing, the next big cure-all in health. But people also want the next big cure-all in energy. What's going to give us energy security, reduce our energy reliance on other countries. The diversity you're talking about. I mean, a lot of those oil producing companies, a lot of those OPEC oil producing nations, those OPEC countries, that's what they're all investing all of that money they're getting from oil into other sources of energy, because they know that it's not always a stable source. They know that there's going to be supply chain issues, like a strait being closed, a canal being blocked by a giant ship that was crashed by whoever, the Evergreen, I believe. Anything could happen like that. One storm, one hurricane, as is happening right now in Texas, that it disrupts your entire energy supply. And if your energy goes away, I mean, that's everything. Speaking science to the public, that's absolutely the case. But that's what we're doing on Twitch, trying to educate the public. Unfortunately, that's also why some people don't want education to be freely available to people. It would be easier to have an ignorant populace. But that's something we all have an interest and responsibility to, I think, in mitigating at the very least.
No, yeah, very, very, very sound points.
So some of the other questions I wanted to ask, you're doing all this great physics content, and I see that you're diversifying your content. You're doing short versions, you're doing short form content, every different platform, your Instagram. What were some of the challenges initially to start adapting your content to these other platforms that have started to emerge, like TikTok and YouTube Shorts, instead of just being a Twitch streamer?
Oh, challenging is a good word. I would say that something that I did a lot was experiment. Obviously, it's in my nature as an applied physicist to experiment and to build things and to try things. But also, one of the really positive things I can say, number one, about myself as a content creator, and number two, as I evaluate my content, is that I don't tend to look at my success with followers or subscribers or whatever it is, kind of thing. And I'm really, really lucky in that regard, because I think a lot of content creators can get really down on themselves when they put hours and hours of work into one video, and then they don't get the response that they expected or wished for, that it can really bring them down morally, and it can be very demotivating. One thing I can say about me as a Twitch streamer and as a various content creator is that never has affected me. It has affected me if something goes ever so slightly viral and people are really nasty in the comments. That has affected me. But I never am down myself if something didn't become successful. So when I do critically evaluate how my video did, it's not so much as if it went viral, if it gained me followers, but rather, was that coherent enough? Did I make my point come across? Did I do a hook or something catchy, or was it not catchy enough? I spent 50% of the video explaining this one little thing that was really not important to the point of the point of the social media content. So I should absolutely scratch that. And when you experiment as long as I have on all these different forms, what I realize is that the recipe changes all the time, whatever is the catchy thing or the good thing. And number two, it's different for every platform. Even something like Instagram, Reels, let's say, TikToks and Shorts, right? You would think that they're all the same. What sells on those platforms is completely different. So, for example, my Instagram, the thing that goes really, really well is physics derivation posts. What goes really viral on TikTok is electronics derivations or electronics problem solvings. And then on Shorts, it's usually a silly edit from my Twitch clips. So even though technically I should be recycling the same format for all three different platforms, what actually works for all three different platforms is different. So my advice is to try everything and anything and never give up, even if you do well, by the way. A lot of people do this. They'll do something well, it goes viral, or it does really, really well, and they replicate that same thing 20 times over. My recommendation is just to keep trying, even if that thing once stuck. Most of the time, that one thing that stuck was just a once in a blue moon kind of thing. Keep trying, keep improving. Don't look at the numbers that come out of it. Look at yourself more than anything. Were you funny? Were you educational? Did you make a good joke? Was that a bad joke? Was that inappropriate? You shouldn't have probably said that. You know, that's the kind of things to reflect on more than the followership that you gained out of these posts. That's my kind of only commentary, I would say. I've constantly improved, constantly changed. And yeah, so if anyone's followed me, you'll notice that my style has changed every 3 months. I think that's a fair statement. Every 3 months, my content has significantly changed.
Yeah, that just brings to mind Miss Frizzle. Make mistakes, get messy. Whatever you have to do, and try again. As Kane says, platform algo differences. I would say also demographic differences. The people who use Instagram Reels are going to be a different population than the people who use Instagram or TikTok or YouTube Shorts. Tumblr, if you post on there, I've posted on there sometimes, and things will go viral if you have more.
That's around?
Yeah, that's still around. Written content
realized.
really does well on Tumblr. So if you write out points that might go somewhere. Yeah, you try things, you make mistakes, you get messy, and maybe it works, and you find things that work, and you keep changing. Yeah, absolutely. And the algorithms are a huge issue because they are, like you said, they're always changing, and I hate the things that I end up seeing because I don't want to see that AI slop that's getting posted, but the algorithm wants you to see it. They wants your eyes on that.
I tried 2 different social medias when I was really experimenting last year. I tried Reddit and something called 9gag. I used to have 9gag 10 years ago, and it was a completely different place. I posted a thing and I posted an emote thing and it did gain traction. I posted a photo of vanadium, actually the photo you saw, the 4 jars of it. And I posted an emote beside my title. I literally got death threats over that post. It was crazy. I deleted 9gag after this. 9gag has changed completely. Apparently it's like, I don't know. I'm trying to compare it to a platform that's completely gone down the drain. Anyways, not a very nice community over there. Reddit is another one. So I thought I'd start off by giving physics education advice, as in someone would post a physics problem and I'll give them a hand solving it. And it was crazy. It was the first thing I ever did. It was a student asking about Newton's gravitational law. They were stuck on a problem. I helped them solve it. And I got berated by a commenter for teaching false physics because he wanted to teach about Einstein's general relativity gravity, and it was just the most. Anyways, my point is not all platforms are for you, number one. So experiment, try a little bit of everything, but absolutely throw it out the window if it's not for you. Even if it's popular, don't do it for yourself. For mental health reasons, I absolutely
even if it might give you some kind of viewership, streaming in general, it has to be something that you continue to enjoy, because if you're not enjoying what you're doing, what's the point? And God, 9gag, I remember the days of LiveJournal though, so maybe it's MySpace and such. So
it didn't used to be that bad. When I remember 9gag, I was like 16 years old. This is over Yeah, it wasn't that bad. I don't get it. What happened to 9gag?
Yeah, so you gave some fantastic advice to anyone who's getting involved in streaming. I think the other kind of advice that people are always looking for is, how do I get started? What do I need to get started in the the technical aspects? Because people are like, oh, I got to buy a fancy mic if they're in VTubing. I have to buy a $2,000 model.
Yeah.
Like, no, I paid like $200 and I got started. It's just starting. So what's the kind of basics that you think a person should be more specifically focused on first?
As an investment. So yeah, absolutely. All the tech that you use is an investment. I am a big advocate for jumping upgrades. So if it's something costs €100 extra, but it is really, really good and lasts you that little bit longer, absolutely do. But I'm also a big advocate for reduce, reuse, recycle. And most important, those two things, reduce, reuse. So use what you have, and if it's nothing, it's nothing. My big thing up front, the biggest and most important thing is a mic. Your camera, you don't even have to have a camera, honestly, but also you can have an awful camera. It's not important. I've seen so many Twitch streamers with no camera, with bad camera, do really, really well. It's the mic really the most important part. Especially if you're doing science communication, it's probably the most important aspect of it. Investing in a good quality mic. Again, I bought this 4 years ago. It was about €100. I think it's a very, very good mic. Maybe, yes, I can upgrade it even furthermore. I don't think so. I invested in it back when I was a PhD student, and it was one of the best investments I've ever done. I think the boom arm, again, another €20, really, really helped. In case people are worried about the currency, €20 and dollars is roughly the same ratio, generally speaking. I do think the mic is the best thing. Most people have smartphones. If you have a smartphone, the camera on it, the mic on it is already enough to go to start making content. All my stuff initially that I started on Instagram that gained traction was using the phone. So even though I had a Twitch camera and a Twitch mic, when I uploaded my first Instagram reel that actually gained thousands of followers for the first time, was a very crudely shot, recorded 1-minute video explaining Feynman's scene in Oppenheimer. I was just explaining a little bit about the science of how he was talking about how the glass would protect himself and from the radiation of the nuclear blast, and I talked a bit about how spectrophotometer, how you have to use you have to use quartz cuvettes because glass cuvettes will not allow UV vis to pass through, or UV, sorry, apologies. It does allow visible light to pass through, of course. So yeah, again, that was a very crude recording. Phone, very poor quality phone, by the way. Mic, and it is about what you say and how you say it that really, really gets the traction. And over the years, over your time, over your experience, you're going to improve bit by bit. I upgrade a little thing on my Twitch every few months. The newest thing is my camera. This is amazing. I still clearly don't know how to use it properly or anything like that, but such a huge investment. I've used a webcam for 6 years, and only 2 months ago did I get an actual DSLR camera. Yes, so after 6 years of Twitch streaming, I have the quote-unquote streamer camera.
Yeah, the streamer
So,
setup.
Mike.
I think that dovetails nicely with you. Talking about like quality of viewers, quality of equipment. You don't need to have everything. You don't have to have fancy speakers. You don't have fancy headphones. Get the things that are going to help you communicate, which are mic and camera. For some reason, that brings to mind the Terry Pratchett quote about boots. You know, if you have the money for good boots that are going to last longer,
Yes.
the boots theory of socioeconomic unfairness. If you have the resources to get good quality stuff, you know, it's a privilege, honestly, but if you have that resource, you know, you should make use of it for quality stuff and try to attract quality viewers who are in that initial stage. They are going to care more about the quality of your content rather than, you know, you have a camera that maybe doesn't work as well. It is going to be that content, absolutely. Yeah, so I've tried to ask a couple times everyone who's involved in science who comes on here, and everyone has been, you know, at astronomy. you're probably someone who is into science fiction at some level, at some point. You mentioned earlier, because you, and in gaming too, you mentioned earlier that intro song I had was from Cult of the Lamb. What's your favorite science fiction? What's your favorite science fiction?
Oh, like
fiction
book
property?
or game or
Book,
anything?
game, TV show, movie.
I'll actually say all three. What's my favorite game, my favorite book, and my favorite movie. My favorite science fiction game series, Mass Effect series, absolutely. Chef's kiss. Movie, Interstellar. Composition by Hans Zimmer is so beautiful in it. I study to it all the time. And number 3 book would be the robotic series by Asimov, specifically the collection of short stories of I, Robot. I think those 3 kind of they're all very different, you know, very, you can't compare any of those 3 sci-fi. But they all kind of mean a lot to me. Come on, say Star Trek. That's TV show. I didn't mention TV show. Yes, I'll fine. TV show Star Trek, yes. Which one is a great question? Because I'll stay Star Trek Enterprise, and there's going to be a whole war in the chat.
I liked Star Trek Enterprise. I was so upset that CBS pushed that to wrap up too soon. I was like, this is actually interesting. The origins of, you know, the Federation and Starfleet. I would say DS9, of course, it's the greatest combination, I think, of like realistic human flaws and failures, and also still the utopian Star Trek stuff. I was going to say Mass Effect 2 if I was going to say my favorite game. Book would be the Ender's Game series. It's unfortunate that the author is kind of a jerk, but I love the science in there, like the quantum entanglement being there. The movie, yeah, it could have been so much better, but it was okay. But using quantum entanglement for long-range communication, you know, you affect one particle and it affects the other particle at the same time. Doesn't matter the distance. I was like, oh man, this is such cool science. Yeah, I love the fact that so much of the science fiction ends up becoming true. You know, the art imitating life and life imitating art. Obviously, Star Trek did that so much better than everyone else with, you know, the pad and all kinds of like 3D printing for organs and such. So great options. So let's talk about, I guess, lastly, the other kind of content you do, which would be games. So let's talk about video games a little bit.
Oh yeah.
What do you like to play? What are you going to play?
So I finished Claire Obscured last week, Expedition 33. What a game. Absolutely hope it wins Game of the Year. Really amazing piece of just work of art. Obviously, we're talking about STEM and science, but talking about art, it's just up there in terms of beautiful work, story, philosophy, the music. It's a wonderful gem that I think, looking back, a lot of it's an iconic moment, I think, in the gaming history. One every few years that happens, and I think Expedition 33 is one of them. Today I started a new game which is very sci-fi. It's called The Altars by 11-Bit Studios. They made Frostpunk, which I absolutely love, a Polish studio, and the concept is very, very interesting. I don't know if I should say anything about it other than it's a survival story base building game. It's really hard to really categorize this game. A lot of people are struggling because it has a little bit of everything. And yeah, it's very sci-fi. It's futuristic and, you know, dystopian a little bit. So if you're into that kind of thing, I definitely recommend it. And I'm only 4 hours or so into it, so I can't judge it too much. Absolutely love games that are sci-fi and story based. Recently, I've been on a great run of video games. I played Cult of the Lamb, which is so good. City Skylines followed by that. That was such an adventure. And then obviously Expedition 33. And I'm enjoying The Altars now. And I realized in the last like 3-4 months that my game experience has been up here. Like, I forgot how good of a high you can get from games, because I'll admit that there's been a slump for a while. And I think it's because I'm a full-time lecturer and a researcher, and so when I come home in the evenings, I've been struggling and maybe a bit tired. I will admit that to a certain extent. That is me, on me, that I might not be engaging into the games as much as possible. But in the last few months, it really has shown me that games can be really, really good, and it's okay to drop a game, even if you're really close to the end. And I feel such guilt for not finishing games. It's like a book. It's a train wreck, but you have to finish it. And give it a 1-star review at the end. But you have to finish the book if you started it. But I think this is advice I need to take to myself, which is to drop the game if it's really, really bad, and it's okay not to finish it. Yeah, that's kind of my spiel. I try to teach physics using video games. There's a few amazing games out there. Obviously, Portal, Kerbal Space Program, everyone's like that. Oh, that's great physics. That's cheesy. That's easy. Best game for physics is Oxygen Not Included. Absolutely top-notch physics. And if you're a nerd, there's the animations and the drawings of all the classical stuff there is just a chef's kiss to history. A certain like volume development, or there's a few contraptions that are historically accurate. Something including the battery, which is the voltaic pile created by Alessandro Volta, one of the batteries, you know, sheets of zinc and copper placed on top of each other, putting batteries in series, i.e. creating a bigger battery storage. All these little things in the game are really, really beautiful in terms of physics and history, and I think the creators did a really wonderful and maybe an undeserved recognition, or sorry, not undeserved, a deserved and under-recognized edition. Yes.
I hear what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah, it's almost midnight for me. I'm getting very tired.
Well, we will wrap up shortly, but because you mentioned art in games, let me make a quick plug here for the game Gris, Gris. It's $1.49. It is $1.49 on Steam right now. You need to go play it if you haven't played it before. Gris, beautiful watercolor, beautiful music. Go buy Gris. It's $1.50. Support indie game developers. You know, it's less than a cup of coffee, and you're going to get 10 hours of enjoyment. Whereas your coffee, you're going to get an hour of enjoyment, and then not be able to sleep at night. So that's my spiel on plugging a game. But I guess lastly, I'm going to wrap up with where can people find you? What are you going to be doing next? And I guess the sort of usual talk show thing, plug whatever you're going to be doing.
Ooh, awesome. So yes, you can follow me at TinyToxicTofu here on Twitch. I am live during the summer a lot because I absolutely should be preparing for my lectures and my research funding and everything like that. But I'm a procrastinator at heart. The reason I succeeded in life until now is because I left everything to the last minute, and everything truly comes from the heart. So you can find me on Twitch. I usually start my streams for a couple of hours with a bit of science and technology education. Lately it's been robotics, but again, we're going to go over I think the topics I'm looking into now are electrical devices, semiconductors. So doing a little bit of electronics. If you're interested in that, make sure to do so. Big event coming up on Wednesday. I'll be on the front page on Twitch for 8 whole hours teaching a crash course electronics and electricity. So if you know nothing about electricity, not a single thing, this is perfect. For 8 hours, I'll be teaching everything from Ohm's law all the way to how LEDs work and how to build a simple analog circuit. I'll even teach the concept of how DC motors work with some physics of magnetism. So hopefully that will be very, very nice and educational for everyone. But yeah, I'm TinyToxicTofu on all social media if you guys want to follow me there. I post stuff everywhere.
You should. What a change in live streaming that, science content, real science content is on the front page. Science content creators are, Twitch ambassadors, which is, as we were talking about, such a great thing for free education, getting a more educated populace.
I got that a couple of months ago. That was amazing. To become a Twitch ambassador. Really, like if you look at a lot of the other Twitch ambassadors, very, very amazing human beings, of course. But I'm a tiny Twitch streamer in comparison. I was very, very surprised and pleasantly surprised. Shout out to Science streams. I think, obviously I was in the batch of the European Twitch ambassadors. I don't think it would have been possible had they not had Science already before that. I think because science communication was on their radar, my application got like the ears perked up, if that makes sense. And I do think Science deserves the credit for that for sure.
Yes, and if you're out there and you haven't seen the Women in STEM series that they did, go back and watch the VODs of that series of events. Fantastic. Make sure if you're out there, you're following TinyToxicTofu on whatever your preferred platforms are.
Except 9gag, please don't go on 9gag.
Yeah, don't look up her Reddit posts or the 9gag stuff.
No.
E to the 2i Pi will get us set up for our field trip, as I like to call it, to another Knowledge Fellowship streamer who is currently live. On I want to thank TinyToxicTofu for taking time out of their busy schedule. I have been Mr. Aegis, and that's where I am on all social media, Mr._Aegis. But go follow E to the 2i Pi. Go follow TinyToxicTofu. We are going to take a field trip to Astro Canuck. Fantastic streamer. We're going to go spend some time there. Make sure to say hello and go follow them. Make sure to follow the Twitch team that we have here for the Knowledge Fellowship. Like I said, there is always someone who is streaming something that is awesome that you can learn from. And I think that's all we have for you today. I want to thank you again for following us and TinyToxicTofu for being our guest. That's all I have for you. Class dismissed. See you all next time. Remember, Volcano Doc. Next time. See us next time for Volcano Doc. Volcanology. Thank you. Let's go.